All right, today we are pulling back the curtain on some of the world's most successful companies. But we're not going to talk about their cool products or their famous leaders. Nope. We're going inside to look at their internal design, their DNA, really. We are going to build their organizational blueprint.
But first, let's kick things off with a big question. I mean, you've seen this happen, right? A company comes out with this amazing, brilliant new strategy. Everyone's excited. But fast forward a year, and crickets. The whole plan just fizzled out. So why? Why do so many great strategies just fail?
Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. A strategy, no matter how smart it is just an idea on paper. To actually make it happen, it needs a solid framework inside the company to hold it up. It needs an intentional design, and that is the blueprint. It's how a company gets its people and its processes all lined up to actually hit its goals.
So here's our game plan. We're going to build this blueprint piece by piece. We'll start with the very foundation, the strategic blueprint. Then we'll get into the three main pillars. Culture, that's the company's personality. Structure, you can think of that as its skeleton. And human resources, which is all about its people power. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at the one thing that impacts every blueprint, change.
Okay, Section 1, the strategic blueprint. This right here is the foundation for everything else. I mean, you can have the most amazing company culture and the strongest structure imaginable, but if the foundation is shaky, the whole thing is going to be unstable.
So the key idea here, the secret sauce, is something called strategic alignment. What this means is that a company's culture, its structure, and its HR practices can't just be doing their own thing in separate corners. No way. They have to be deliberately designed to pull in the exact same direction, all working together to support that main strategy. It's all about creating harmony instead of chaos.
So let's move on to our very first pillar and see how this works. Culture, or the company's personality. This is all the shared beliefs and values that tell people how to act. You know, it's that vibe you get when you walk into an office. It's the unwritten rules of how things really work around here.
And culture? Well, it has layers, kind of like an onion. On the very surface, you've got the observable artifacts. This is the stuff you can literally see, like the office layout, how people dress, the company logos. Go a little deeper, and you find the espoused values. This is what the company says it believes in. You know, that mission statement hanging on the wall? But right at the core, the most powerful part, are the basic assumptions. These are the deep, unspoken beliefs that actually drive how people behave. Now, to make this a little easier to grasp, there's a really useful framework that sorts cultures into 4 basic types. First up, you've got the clan culture. It's super collaborative, feels like a family. Then there's adhocracy, which is all about being dynamic and taking risks to innovate. Think of a classic tech startup. The market culture is all about one thing, winning. It's competitive and totally results-driven. And finally, you have the hierarchy culture, which is built on control, rules, and doing things by the book. Think of a big government agency.
So just for a second, think about your own job or a place you used to work. Did it feel more like a supportive clan, or was it more of a hard-charging competitive market? Just being able to spot the culture you're in is a huge first step to understanding why things happen the way they do.
Okay, time for our second pillar, structure. This is the company's skeleton. If culture is the personality, structure is the formal system of who does what. It's the org chart. It's what decides who reports to whom and how all the work officially gets divided up.
And one of the biggest questions of structure is this: where does the power actually live? In a centralized company, all the key decisions are made way up at the top. But in a decentralized company, that power is pushed down to lower-level managers and teams, which empowers them to make calls and move a lot faster.
And this structure can look a whole bunch of different ways. A tiny startup? It probably has a simple structure, with one person calling the shots. As a company gets bigger, it might switch to a functional structure, with separate departments for things like marketing and finance. A huge global company might use a divisional structure, with totally separate units for different products or regions. And then you have the really complex places that use a matrix structure, where an employee might report to 2 bosses at once.
All right, let's connect all this with our third and final pillar, HR, or human resources. Now, this is not just about filling out paperwork. HR is the system that manages a company's single most important asset. It's people. It's the engine of people power. You can think of the HR system as the guide for an employee's entire journey with the company. It all starts with recruiting and picking the right people. Then it's about onboarding them, getting them plugged into the culture.
From there, it's about developing their skills, managing their performance, and eventually deciding who gets promoted or who doesn't. Every single step is a chance to make that organizational blueprint even stronger.
And of course, a huge part of HR is compensation, but it's so much more than just a paycheck. You've got your base pay, your salary or hourly wage. Then you have incentives, like bonuses or stock options, which are meant to drive certain behaviors. And finally, you have benefits, like health insurance and retirement plans. How a company balances these three things says a ton about its strategy and what it really values.
So, we've got our three pillars in place: culture, structure, and HR. You might be thinking, great, the blueprint's done, but not so fast. A blueprint can't be carved in stone because the world outside is always changing. And that brings us to our final crucial section: change. Generally, companies have two ways of dealing with change. There's reactive change, which is basically putting out fires. You're just responding to problems after they've already happened. But then there's proactive change. This is all about building for the future, planning ahead for shifts you see coming down the road. Let me tell you, the organizations that really last are masters of proactive change. A really classic, simple way to manage this is Lewin's three-step model. First, you unfreeze things by creating the motivation to change. Then you introduce the change itself, teaching people new skills or processes. And finally, and this is the step so many people forget, you have to refreeze the new way of doing things so it becomes the new normal and people don't just snap back to their old habits.
But even with the best plan in the world, you're going to hit resistance, and it's almost always for very human reasons. Look, people are afraid of the unknown. They might not trust management's motives. They might be scared they'll fail in the new system, or even that they'll lose their status or their job. So managing change is really about managing people's very real fears.
And that brings us all the way back around. We've built this blueprint, we've aligned the culture, the structure, and the HR, all while getting ready for change. Which leads me to one last question just for you. When you think about your company's personality, its skeleton, and its people systems, how well do you actually fit its blueprint? Because in the end, that's the big takeaway here. Great organizations do not just happen by accident. They are the result of very intentional design. And the best of the best, they know that their blueprint is never, ever truly finished. It's constantly being redesigned.